One of two ways with energy policy, leading us towards energy security, relying on the domestic solutions that are in front of us, or more and more reliance on foreign sources of energy. November 4th is that time of choosing. We're going to go one of two ways. For our part, John McCain and I, we're determined to set this country firmly on a path towards energy independence. America has the resources to achieve this vital goal. We certainly have the ingenuity, and John McCain and I, if we are elected, we will supply the political will finally to get this done. In my experience in Alaska, I've seen what American ingenuity can achieve if given a chance. As governor of a huge energy producing state, and as chair of our state's Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and as chair of the nation's Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, I've also seen how political pressures and special interests and corporate abuses, though, can work against the clear public interest in expanding our domestic energy supplies. I've had to take on some of that, especially there in Alaska, taking on a good old boy network that had been too controlled by some of those interests. Alaska is one of the most resource-rich places on Earth. Yet for many years, our state's oil and gas wealth was the carefully guarded preserve of the political establishment, that good old boy network. And it was rewarded by a few big oil companies through an oil services company that liked things just the way that they were. They didn't want any shaken up. They didn't want anybody to come in and disrupt the good things that they had going there. But it was to the public's detriment what was going on. And as you may have seen this week in the news, Alaska's senior senator is not the first man to discover the hazards of getting too close to oiled, moneyed interests with agendas of their own. For the people of Alaska and their representatives, it's been a hard enough time that we have had to persuade Congress even to authorize some of our developments. Start from the beginning of our energy producing history, trying to get authorization to construct our original Trans-Alaska oil pipeline. When Congress finally acted in 1973 to allow for that infrastructure to be built, they approved the pipeline over the no votes of a few senators, including Senator Joe Biden. He kicked his career off, his political career, saying no to this piece of infrastructure up in Alaska that has safely flowed 15 billion barrels of U.S. crude into hungry U.S. markets. He started his career saying no to that domestic solution, and it's been no ever since. For the next 3 decades in Alaska, then, there had been talk of building our next piece of infrastructure that was so necessary to feed hungry U.S. markets. This would be a gas pipeline to transport cleaner, greener natural gas down to the lower 48. We have such an abundance of natural gas in Alaska. Geologists show us hundreds of trillions of cubic feet waiting to be tapped on offshore. But all that it ever amounted to up in Alaska and across the U.S. for the plans for this gas line had been talk. Everybody talked about it and planned for it and dreamed about it. There have been articles written about the need for a natural gas pipeline to feed U.S. markets since the 50s. Ever since I grew up, I remember hearing about this dream for a natural gas pipeline. But all it was talk. And one of the main obstacles was big oil itself that wanted a pipeline, a gas pipeline even, to be built only on their terms. ExxonMobil was one of the participants in that, and other companies also. They should have been competing to invest in a new means of delivering their product to market. They should have been competing for the right to tap into the hungry markets, flowing our resources into those hungry markets, and instead they wanted a higher and higher price than any fair competition would yield, so they wouldn't build the line. They were holding out for more billions of dollars in public money. No one in good conscience could pay them what they wanted to build that gas line. And that's how things were left. That's how we found them when I decided to run for governor. There was no progress, no pipeline, no gas revenue for Alaska, no added energy security for America, because previously it had been all talk. So we introduced, when I got elected, we introduced the big oil companies and their lobbyists to a concept of something that evidently they had forgotten, and that's free market competition. They had a monopoly previously on power and on resources, and we broke it. And the result, finally, is progress on the largest private sector infrastructure project in North America's history, a nearly $40 billion natural gas pipeline to help lead America to energy independence. That's what I've been working on up in Alaska to help all of you, to help the rest of the U.S. Energy supplies safely, ethically being tapped into, flowing through infrastructure to feed our hungry markets. So with this gas line, when the last section of pipe is laid and its valves are open, that gas line will lead America one step farther away from reliance on foreign energy. And that pipeline will be a lifeline, freeing us from more U.S. debt and dependence and the influence of foreign powers that do not have America's interest at heart. And it is so important that more Americans realize what we're up against when we consider our reliance on these foreign sources. Americans blame Washington for doing next to nothing about our energy problems. And on that front, they are right. The American public is right when they understand that not enough has been done in D.C. to get us off the path that we're on, put us on a better path. Abroad, we see Russia now with designs on a vital pipeline in the Caucasus. Wouldn't they love to control entirely that pipeline? Its strategy there is to divide and intimidate our European allies by using energy as a weapon. And there, as elsewhere, we cannot leave ourselves at the mercy of foreign suppliers. To confront the threat that Iran, too, might seek to cut off nearly a fifth of the world's oil supplies, or that terrorists might strike at vital refining facilities in Saudi Arabia, or to consider that Venezuela might shut off its oil deliveries, as Hugo Chavez likes to threaten sometimes. We Americans need to produce more of our own oil and gas, and we can do it because we have it here. God has so richly blessed our land with the supplies that we need. And in the worst cases, some of the world's most oil-rich nations, they're also the most oppressive societies. And whether we like it or not, the money that we pay, U.S. dollars going to pay for their oil, only makes them more powerful and more oppressive. Oil wealth allows undemocratic governments to crush dissent and to subjugate women, to oppress the people who live in these countries. Other regimes, too, they use it to finance terrorists around the world and the criminal syndicates in our own hemisphere. By relying upon oil from the Middle East, we not only provide wealth to the sponsors of terror, but we provide high-value targets to the terrorists themselves across the world. These pipelines, refineries, transit routes, and terminals for the oil that we rely on. And Al-Qaeda terrorists, they know where those are. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, there's also, of course, the damage that our dependence on foreign oil inflicts on our economy. Over the years, trillions of U.S. dollars have flowed out of our country, often to nations or regimes hostile to our country. Through this massive transfer of wealth, we lose hundreds of billions of dollars a year that would be much better invested here in American enterprises to create American jobs. And all of this explains why, as Senator McCain has said, energy security is not just one more issue on the candidate questionnaire. It's much more important than that. Energy security is the sum total of so many problems that confront our nation. November 4th is that time of choosing. We're going to go one of two ways.